The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Howdy ho, Bitcoin folks.
Josh Shigala from Vaultoro.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening.
Ben Ark from BTC IoT.
Shemayan, hello all.
Gabriel D. Vine from the World Crypto Network.
Great to be back, all. Good to see you.
Justin Newton from Netkey.
Hey, everybody. It's great to see you today.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one. Issue one, Novogratz Galaxy provides liquidity on Goldman Bitcoin futures. Goldman has restarted its crypto trading desk earlier this year, and Galaxy expects to add additional investment banks as customers. Bitcoin's hitting the big time as Galaxy Digital Holdings will serve as a liquidity provider on Bitcoin futures for Goldman Sachs Group as the security firm re-enters the cryptocurrency markets. Dan Eve, will Goldman Sachs be more successful this time? This time, will they stay in the cryptocurrency markets?
Well, if the prophecies are foretold are to come true, then and we are headed for like the 250K region, then this is kind of a good time to be jumping back in, right? Although we've had a pretty tremendous drop across the board, so obviously Bitcoin is down from highs of nearly 65. It's probably scared the markets quite a lot, but also tempted people back in from the perspective that it's dropped this much, it always goes back up. That's the one thing is that it seems to always go back up. So maybe it's good timing, right, to get back in, get people invested. And to provide those services because they're less likely to get caught with their, caught out when if they're buying the top at 65 and now sat there with the customer base going, hey, what the hell happened? You let me buy Bitcoin and now it's 35K and going lower. So maybe this is good. At the end of the day, these are big companies and they're lending legitimacy to it being a tradable asset. And you take that along with, El Salvador and other countries, smaller countries or the dollar-dependent countries starting to seriously consider or at least publicly talk about going Bitcoin, building Bitcoin infrastructure, then I think, there's a lot of big moves, I think, coming this way.
Just like to remind everyone to give us a thumbs up down below. It's free. Justin Newton, your thoughts on Goldman Sachs re-entering Bitcoin trading?
Yeah, well, look, I think it made sense when they exited the space, and I think it makes sense now that they're re-entering. And so, to talk about that a little bit, I want to talk about the things that are different now that may lead to them spending a little bit more time in the space and this actually becoming a permanent offering. So, if you looked at crypto the last time Goldman was involved, the market size was a lot smaller. And it's not just in terms of market cap, but more importantly, in terms of market participants. The types of people that were asking about investing in crypto was frankly crypto people. It wasn't mainstream investors. But one of the things that happened in this last cycle through crypto is it did actually start to attract the interest of, more institutions, more family offices that are not ones that we would have traditionally thought of as sort of crypto focused. It's sort of pushed out more into the mainstream of investment. The other thing that's different this time is that the infrastructure and the regulations are better developed. And so it's easier for them, for example, to plug into a player like Galaxy Digital that's going to be continuing to develop and evolve their tools for institutions over time and just kind of turn those services on in a way that they will have more protection with respect to technological innovation and a partner that can help to move things forward for them. Versus early on, all of these kinds of build outs were more bespoke, where they were having to build things that were custom to themselves when the rules weren't really fully defined and the products weren't really fully defined. And, so those things, frankly, often become expensive to maintain and, important to throw away, frankly. If you look at what Goldman is doing in this way, you can almost look at it in the way that a traditional startup would work, where they may launch a product initially, not find product market fit with it, go back to the drawing board, and then relaunch a product that has a much higher likelihood of success because they were able to refine and tune what they were thinking on the product market fit.
Well, I'm glad they tried again, and I'm happy to welcome them back. Ben Ark, your thoughts on Goldman Sachs?
Yeah, I agree completely. It's a case of the infrastructure being built out now, and these more sophisticated market participants feeling much more at ease. You look at the price, and I think the price now is reflecting sort of a lot of unsophisticated Elon Musk tweet tracing traders. But there is this huge move for these more sophisticated players to be involved in Bitcoin and the crypto space in general, and the infrastructure is being built out for them, and it's giving them an apparatus in which they can work within. So yeah, I agree completely with what Justin said there. I really liked the concept within the article. I think it said someone called Urban said that the oil is an extremely volatile asset. People are aware, and they're like, hey, this is a volatile asset, and that's true with Bitcoin. It's just because it's volatile doesn't mean that you can't trade anything, and it shouldn't be part of mainstream finance and finance packages and as a trading mechanism. So yeah, it's all good news, and it's the right time for Goldman Sachs, and that they are going to feel a lot more comfortable in the environment which they're in now, and it's just going to attract a big name like Goldman Sachs getting back and forth is just going to attract more and more bigger players into Bitcoin.
Goldman Sachs, that's the name that's printed on my Apple Card. Gabriel D. Vine, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Thomas. This is just inevitable. Bitcoin is the, darling asset of the cognoscenti in 2021. I believe that Thomas and I spoke about this decade being the time when Bitcoin explodes into the mainstream, and we're seeing that. No surprise that Goldman Sachs is trying again to bring their clients into the ecosystem. After all, Bitcoin is the very best collateral in the world. So as a basis for Galaxy to back, these future contracts and stuff, it's not just for investment in Bitcoin specifically, but also, like I said, as a collateral or as a functional part of investment strategies by large hedge funds and such. It's a natural fit and an inevitability. So yeah, no surprise in the slightest.
It is interesting to see how long it took them to provide Bitcoin for their clients. For so many shows, Gabriel, I, and Tone and others were all here, and we were like, why won't they offer this? It's an investment. Sure, it's risky. You could go up or down, but to not offer it to so many large value clients for years and years and years never made any sense. And it's glad to see them starting to show some sense, even if it's been a long time. Joshua Shigala, your thoughts on Goldman Sachs getting back into the trading business?
The thing is that for me, I'm going to take the opposite. I think this is god awful. I think that really it's inevitable for sure, but it's god awful. These guys aren't just credit line. They don't have massive credit lines. They are the credit lines. They can short this mother to the ground and then buy up the real assets. They can take free funny money that they can get tons of and basically buy up real rare numbers. And they understand that this stuff has value. I mean, saying that, Tether could do the same thing. Tether can just buy up real rare numbers and make up fake ones to sort of do it with. So, it's not like it's not happening anyway. I'm not saying that Tether are doing that, but they could, and Goldman Sachs can as well. There's been a long history of all the silver bugs talking about JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all the big players, naked short selling the hell out of silver, and finding ETFs where they can get access to the stock and of these ETFs and just basically naked short them to then buy up the real asset or to have massive short positions. So I've got to say that, this is a pretty important asset class to be into. And if you wanted to buy up a whole bunch of it to have on the books, you want to play some of those games. Well, they are ready to play those games. So I think this is kind of bearish news for the short term. It's bullish long term because they're going to buy it up and then pump it. But I feel like they're going to want to buy that stuff up. And they've been known to dump on their own clients, by the way.
If you can't trust a bank, who can you trust? Moving on to the exit question. Forced prediction. JP Morgan's in, Goldman Sachs is in. Give me the name of another bank that'll be in next. Is it Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Bank of England, Bank of some country? Dan Eve, the crypto raptor, name a bank or institution that'll get into Bitcoin next.
I'm going to go out on a limb, because why not, and say something like, I don't know, like HSBC. They're like a big international bank. They're kind of, their adverts are all about the people and stuff. So, and Bitcoin's for the people. So it would make sense that they'd ape in.
I like that one. That's the one that had the slots that fit the suitcases for briefcases for money laundering. They designed the slots. That's a quality bank.
Oh, they're great at money laundering and all sorts of other nefarious activities as well. So they'll fit in like a dime.
They'll fit in well here in crypto. Absolutely. Justin Newton, what bank or institution will accept Bitcoin next?
Well, dude, you sort of gave me a cheating question, because I know for a fact that exactly 80 days from today, the Central Bank of El Salvador is going to start exchanging Bitcoin on behalf of their citizens and residents. So, this is a sovereign country getting into the game. It's a pretty big deal.
That's pretty big, a little bigger than Goldman Sachs, but not quite as fun to make fun of. Ben,
Sure.
Name a bank or institution. Go ahead.
Yeah, central banks in Central and South America. I think Deutsche Bank and Deutsche Bank. They get on? Are they on board on Bitcoin yet? They're a big banking entity, aren't they? They're in Germany and their vaults are full of gold, and they haven't got any room for more gold. So Bitcoin, stores pretty well. So maybe Deutsche Bank as well.
Deutsche Bank's in trouble all over the board. So maybe it's kind of a bankruptcy protection plan. We were into Bitcoin all along. You should have trusted us. Gabriel D. Vine, name a bank.
I was actually going to say HSBC too, but in the absence of that, I'm going to say Norway, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Norway.
Finally, a Bitcoin place where we can do some skiing. Josh Shigala, can you top Norway at a place that'll take Bitcoin next?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like Deutsche Bank, 2 days ago, rang a friend of mine saying he has to now pay negative interest rates on his holdings. So that's fun. Zimbabwe, Bank of Zimbabwe. Come on, bring it on.
All right, Zimbabwe, getting some Africa on this show. Moving on to issue 2. Issue 2, Bitcoin price falls below 37K amid little hope of a definitive weekend bounce. Support may be at $36,000, but it may be temporary. One trader warns after a major Binance buy wall is obliterated. Despite the Bitcoin conference, despite El Salvador, we have nothing but bad news for the price of Bitcoin. Let's go to Ben Ark. What's going on with the price of Bitcoin? Why can't all this good news satisfy anyone? We even had inflation news. There was inflation fears. Still not enough. Ben Ark.
Part of the suspicious part of me wants to blame Bitcoin Miami, because I remember the last Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin 2019, is so similar. The Bitcoin market at the time, like it had just dropped. Everyone was still pretty high because we had relatively high price, and everyone was kind of assuming that it was then going to tick up, and it didn't. It just continued to bear down. So it just feels like a very similar time. Obviously, the prices are much bigger now than they were back then. But yeah, it's I think we're going to be bearish for a little while. But even though the price is being bearish, there is all this, as we just spoke about in the last topic. There is all these great moves and all this long-term bullishness Taproot and whatever else. So that the technology keeps improving, the software keeps improving, and it's not really worth paying attention to. You just got to hold on and just ride it out.
The price of Bitcoin always goes up after conferences, except when it doesn't. Josh Sigala, what's going on with the price of Bitcoin?
I mean, I don't even know why this is a news story. Like, it's been bouncing between, 35 and 40 and 30. And it's been doing this for a little while now. It's just heading down. It's been overbought. It's now getting a little bit sold off. Whatever. It's already like very moonish, I would say. This price is it's very high, but I think it's going to go way higher, and just hold on and enjoy the ride.
Gabriel D. Vine, the price of Bitcoin used to be more, now it's less. What's going on?
I thought something in this article actually did stick out to me, which is quite interesting. They were referring to previous cycles, and it is interesting to see the parallels between 2013, 2017, 2021. There's definitely 2021 looks like it's exactly in between the two as far as percentage moves, including the altcoins. So they were talking about altcoin slump, of course, even more serious than Bitcoin. And to me, everything that we're seeing sets up a much bigger second half of the bull cycle in 2021, possibly going into 2022. But I think not. I'm looking for new all-time highs later in the summer, certainly in the fall, and probably another blow-off top at some ridiculously high number. I did call correction to 29 and from 64, and my call for the price, the spike at the top is $425,000. And then I'm expecting another 90% drop from there, so something around 75 after that. But I do also expect another altcoin bubble to blow up after that or during that and crash as well, even 99% or whatever. So that's my take. That's my prediction.
Gabriel D. Vine with the hard numbers, the fixed predictions. Shout out to Joe in the chat, Bitbrum in Birmingham, and he just happened to be here too. Dan Eve, your thoughts on the price of Bitcoin?
It goes up, it goes down. It's always scary. I'm not going to lie. It's difficult not to look at Blockfolio all the time, or just, turn the alerts off. It's just the easy thing to do, because, and we say this all the time, if the price goes down, like, most people are still building, they haven't gone bankrupt yet. They're still building infrastructure. And so that when the next wave comes along, there's so many more goods and services that you can use Bitcoin for. And there's so many more people that know about Bitcoin. This time round, there's when I remember specifically a stag do I went on in 2015, and I was trying to convince my some mates there who are brokers at Lloyd's of London, and they just were like, it was just continuously taking the piss out of me about Bitcoin, and I just couldn't win them over. And he's recently gone and bought like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So one of the guys. So it does show that that people are starting to pay more attention. And seeing it as a buying opportunity. A lot of people that were sat on the sidelines going, oh shoot, I didn't buy Bitcoin at, when it was $30,000. Like, those people they're in the market now. They're like waiting for it. They're like, edging, waiting for that further dip so that they can buy in again. So it's just it's volatility that comes with Bitcoin. It will be up again eventually, and it will probably be back down again. It will be back down again eventually. You just got to ride it like that. That famous little GIF with the Bitcoin in the roller coaster, and sometimes the roller is pointing up, sometimes it's pointing down. As long as you hold on tight, and you don't need to sell when it's when it's at a low. So try and do a bit of planning and save yourself some hassle having to sell Bitcoin when you're broke and Bitcoin's down, or just try not to sell any at all and stack sats forever.
Isn't it the craziest thing? When it was worthless, I couldn't get anybody to buy it. Now that it's worth more money than anybody has, everybody wants to buy it. It just doesn't make any sense. Justin Newton, your thoughts on the price of Bitcoin?
Well, I'm more of a technologist and an entrepreneur than a trader. So anyone who followed my trading advice would probably go broke. But to follow up on what the Crypto Raptor said, from my perspective, anytime the price goes down, it means that everybody needs to leave the resorts and get back to work, and so it means that we can start building and making some progress.
All right, moving on to the exit question. You'll have to predict against the magical predictor Bitcoin ball. Ben Ark, the price of Bitcoin this time next week, higher or lower?
Lower for a bit and then eventually higher, but lower.
Josh Sigala.
Lower.
Gabriel D. Vine.
The sentiment is bearish in the room today. Lower.
Dan Eve.
I'm with you, Cats. I'm going lower. I'm seeing some red, some good buying opportunities for those who missed the boat.
Justin Newton, give us some green.
I have no clue, so I'm just following everybody else.
All right, here we go. Remember, you have to ask the ball yes or no questions. You're not supposed to shake it, but we do anyway. It could cause bubbles. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely.
Right.
The ball has spoken, not financial advice. Don't just trust the ball. Of course, it is easier than thinking. Moving on to issue 3. Bitcoin has 3 flaws, and that could set the stage for other alternatives, says a Cornell economist who got into Bitcoin just yesterday. Let's find out what his 3 flaws are. Number 1, mining harms the environment. Number 2, not so anonymous after all. And number 3, doesn't even show up on CNBC's website. So I guess it's not that important. Gabriel D. Vine, what do you think about this economist who just found out about Bitcoin and is here to save the day?
The third one is, oh, you just moved away. I'm just trying to remember what it was. It was so ridiculous though that I'm having trouble remembering.
There was no third one. It didn't show up.
It's at the top. No, it's at the top. Anyways, I don't know why you picked this article. It's actually really it's important to recognize that the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and just blatant lies are very much still with us. The disinformation campaigns continue with full force, all the way up to the very top of institutions, banks, businesses, entrepreneurs. You've got people like Elon Musk spreading blatant lies. I think his angle is his entire business model depends on credits, carbon credits, and fake climate legislation. So he's just basically trying to take the Bitcoin angle on that. And this is just completely full of lies, BS, crap that we've been getting in the media about Bitcoin since the beginning. And it doesn't appear to be letting up. So it's really fun because for people stacking sats, it'll probably keep the price lower longer.
The third point is that Bitcoin doesn't function well as a currency. Of course, you have to ignore the Lightning Network for this to be true. Joshua Shigala, your points on Bitcoin's 3 flaws.
I mean, Bitcoin's got plenty of flaws. It's just doesn't matter because it's the parts of it that aren't flaws are freaking amazing and basically disrupt everything we know about money. And so the fact that we can now have rare numbers, meaning you can have ownership of a real asset without any intermediaries and be able to take that worldwide and not have it confiscatable is so stunning. And that it just doesn't matter if it takes a lot of electricity. We've said it before on this show, but PlayStations on standby mode worldwide take up triple the amount of electricity. And like, what the heck? You know, are you going to complain about PlayStations? Ooh, we better get amongst the gamers and tell them they're all crap because they're standby gaming machines are all like, using up so much power. The fact of the matter is, we've said it so many times on the show, but Bitcoin finds great sources of energy. In terms of it not being so private, well, there's privacy coming, and some people think that that's actually a good thing. So if it was super private, the article would say, "Ooh, it's anonymous" as number 2. So you can't make some people happy. And the third one, whatever that is also probably crap. I'll just leave it at that.
Ben Ark, your thoughts on the latest Bitcoin FUD?
It's that superficial new understanding of Bitcoin. When you're creating something which is truly digitally scarce without a trusted third party, it's really hard, and it requires a lot of patience to do it properly. And then, yes, you can write papers on all these amazing smart contracts and social scalability and how we can use Bitcoin for all these other things than just sending transfer from one person to another. But to build all those things in a way which is resilient and isn't a house built on sand requires a lot of patience. So when you look at a lot of the shit coins offering, much more private alternatives or offering all these different smart contracting options, they're experiments and some of them work, but the houses built on sand, that they're not patient. They're built by impatient people. They want Bitcoin to work in a certain way right now. They can't wait 5-10 years for it to actually develop properly. And then as you learn more about Bitcoin, you learn more about the people working on Bitcoin and some of the problems they're solving, you realize that actually we are working to all these ideals, true fungibility and privacy and the ability to run all these scripts and do all these other things within Bitcoin. But it just takes time, and you just have to be patient. And it's the same with energy consumption. Yes, me sending value on chain to you does have a carbon footprint, but using the Lightning Network and sending many tens of thousands, millions of transactions using one transaction, or using some sort of side chain off Bitcoin to send value from one person to another can mitigate a lot of that carbon footprint and can make it much more efficient. It's just a question of patience. So when you say that Bitcoin doesn't work well as a digital currency, I can't send other digital currencies through the internet a penny's worth of value to somebody else in a way which is truly private, and in a way where I can completely trust that the value which I'm sending to them is going to be secure forever, as long as they look after their own private keys and what have you. Bitcoin works better. I mean, particularly if you think of legacy digital value transfer mechanisms on the internet, Bitcoin's leagues ahead of their capabilities. And then when it comes to the alternatives, the cryptocurrency alternatives, they're impatient solutions for impatient people, and you've just got to wait for this stuff to be built properly, which it is. And that's why we're having things like Taproot being locked in. And that's why Bitcoin continues to progress and get better over time, slowly and properly.
Justin Newton, your thoughts on the Cornell Economist?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of things. First, at a high level, it reminds me of an article from 1996 by a futurist named Cliff Skolnick, who was talking about how nobody would ever use the internet. And so, for example, it's way too slow to, for example, watch video online. I mean, would anyone ever actually watch video online? Probably not. How the shopping experience online was terrible. Nobody would ever buy products online. And, you would never get your news online because, people deliver a newspaper to you every day, and websites aren't updating that often in 1996. And so, there were all these things where, they were basically looking at an infant and expecting it to be an adult, and not able to sort of project forward where things were going. And I think that's some of what Ben was saying here is, people are sort of jumping forward. But to address some of the specific items in the article, I think environmental concerns are real, and they should be addressed and looked at. I actually think we do a pretty good job of that as a community because of the nature of mining requiring it to go to low cost sources. and burning things is more expensive than not burning things typically. And so, there's cost factors that come in there. I also, by the way, love the Bitcoin energy of the idea that they said you need to do more environmental mining, and the Bitcoin community said volcanoes. That's pretty awesome, and felt very like the Bitcoin answer to environmental mining. That was pretty excellent to see. When they talk about the not being anonymous, I would agree. I think the fact that every transaction is transparently available for everyone to view is a shortcoming long term. It's privacy affecting. It's not something that we want to have to happen, but it's something that the Bitcoin community is actively working on. Right? When you look at Lightning, Lightning developers consider transparency of every transaction a bug, not a feature. And so, yes, today there's still some vulnerabilities where you can do things to transactions or look at them. But where with Bitcoin, if a transaction was missing from the blockchain, you would consider that a bug and immediately need to go fix it to make sure everyone could see that transaction. In Lightning, they're seeing it the opposite way, so that, if I want to send money to Ben, no one needs to know that I sent it. You might be able to check balances online, but transaction activity will have gone away. When you add that into advances that are happening with Taproot, that helps obscure multi-sig mixers and other things like that, privacy goes up every single day in the way that it should. And the last of it not being a currency, look, there's challenges with it being a currency. The price fluctuates. Right. So if I am living hand to mouth and I need to buy my family food tomorrow based on what I needed today, Bitcoin might not be how I want to store my value, because if it does go down 20 or 30% overnight, that means my family is going to eat less food tomorrow. But even in that case, I might want my savings account to be in Bitcoin because, I know that the fiat I have is going to be worth I know for sure that the fiat I have is going to be worth some amount less next year. And probably the crypto I have is going to be worth some amount more next year. And so, there's opportunities to utilize traditional currency and cryptocurrency side by side as crypto, grows and expands to become a more mature currency that does settle into those other use cases in the same way that now we're increasing transaction capacity, we're increasing privacy, we'll increase stability as the market grows as well.
Dan, Eve, your thoughts on the 3 flaws of Bitcoin?
So I think there's some really good points raised there. The fact that not everything is flawless for a start. You can't build a tank that's completely impermeable but not really heavy. There's a downside to that. If you want, you've got to make sacrifices in certain areas. But the main thing is that Bitcoin is evolving, and although it's evolving slowly in some people's eyes, it's evolving at a pace that's necessary to maintain its ninja uptime of 99.99999 whatever it is percent now. The fact that the whole environmental thing, I think it needed to happen, and probably a lot of people hate me for saying this, is that it did need to happen because it's going to be a prevalent issue for Bitcoin until all this information's amalgamated, and they've got these these more studies in place that are from more studies that are believed by the non-believers, right? Because that's the difference at the moment. You've got companies like CoinShares, like Novogratz's company, they're producing studies. They want people to see that Bitcoin isn't actually energy hungry from non-renewables, but then they're not believed by the other side, because the other side produces a report and they look at things in an isolated manner. So the more the infrastructure is being put in place, the more the environment side has been criticized. It kind of reached a point where now we're putting everything in place to say, right, Bitcoin isn't it's power hungry, but it uses renewable energy and it incentivizes it too. The anonymity, I think it was Josh that was saying, if it was completely anonymous, that would be number 2. So there's just a flip side of what you desire in a currency, and some people don't want the private currency. They don't want the idea of anonymity, and they don't like any encryption. Everything should be open, and you're not going to satisfy everyone at the end of the day. And the fact that it's pseudo anonymous is kind of nice because it's in the middle, right? It's got more anonymity features that are being developed. And also at the same time, it's not completely, it's not completely anonymous. It is relatively transparent, so that services like Chain Alisnitch can fish around and figure things out. And the other thing about it not being used as a currency, people don't know about Lightning, for example. They've only just learned about Bitcoin, and the problem is that when they don't know about all the other the other extensions to Bitcoin that are reducing the footprint, or at least they're making it more economical, more efficient, transactions more efficient via Lightning. They're not being fed that. I mean, what did this article say? It said like they're being fed Ethereum's new upgrade is 99.995%. Less uses less power, it's more efficient. So they're actually being shilled other coins. They're not hearing about the the infrastructure that's being built on Bitcoin and learning about that and being taught about that by the economists. They're being taught by someone who's just bought some Ethereum and is like, oh, I'm in a position to shill, maybe I should. And I think that sadly, we're going to see a lot of news stations doing that. I think we're going to see a lot of sites that realize that they can have influence. They look up to Elon Musk and see he's tweeted something and they're like, we can move the markets. They move the markets at Bloomberg just for fun. And so I think we're going to see a bit more of that happening, where there's going to be a lot more manipulation, a lot more underhand dirty tricks from even the other coins trying to out environmentalize Bitcoin. But ultimately, Bitcoin's king and queen all at the same time.
Exit question. If you had a magic wand and you could fix one of the 3 flaws of Bitcoin, which flaw would you fix first? Bitcoin mining harms the environment, Bitcoin is pseudo-anonymous, or Bitcoin is not a good currency because of volatility. Ben Ark, which flaw would you fix?
A pseudo-anonymous. We need truly private, fungible Bitcoin.
Josh Shigala.
Wow, tough question. Maybe, I stick with Ben there on that one.
Justin Newton, mining in the environment, pseudo-anonymity, or volatility. What would you fix?
Yeah, number one is anonymity and privacy for me, with a close second being the environmental impacts.
It's starting to look like a full sweep. Dan Eve, what would you fix?
I actually think that the environmental part's already covered. And the volatility side, I'm not going to lie, I want it to keep going up. So it's going to remain volatile as long as loads of people want it to number to keep going up. So I think, I'm going anonymity.
All right, anonymity, fixing the environment, volatility. We seem to have lost Gabriel Devine. Hopefully he'll rejoin us, but we are going to continue. Have you seen the new WCN Clips channel? Check it out on YouTube at WCN Clips. You could be one of the first 50 subscribers to WCN Clips. Smaller version of this shows and other shows on WCN Clips on YouTube. Just search Google for WCN Clips. Issue 4, emerging markets could be the next big frontier for crypto. A slew of politicians want to follow El Salvador and adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. At the same time, Miami's mayor looks to woo Chinese Bitcoin miners with low energy prices and clean nuclear power. And the World Bank has rejected El Salvador's request for help on Bitcoin implementation. What do you guys think is more likely and the better place to focus on resources? Somewhere like Miami in the developed world that's looking to adopt mining and other things, or somewhere like El Salvador or the developing world that is looking to adopt Bitcoin? As well as we should talk about how they asked for help from the World Bank, which seems very strange. Justin Newton, you were actually there in El Salvador. Yeah. So let's go to you for some on the ground commentary. You were part of Brock Pierce's delegation. What was it like? How did it go?
Totally. Yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about that. And first, I do want to say I'm excited about all the things that are happening in Miami as well. I think Mayor Suarez there is bringing some great energy to things and really doing the right things to try and engage and attract the industry. But I will say, if I was given one of the two to choose to focus on, it would be what's happening in El Salvador. For me, financial inclusion is a big reason that I got into crypto. Inclusion is a stepping stone to freedom. And so, from my perspective, the things that we can do that make Bitcoin more a part of people's day-to-day lives and get it into the hands of people that don't have access to traditional financial services, traditional banking, and those kinds of things. Like, that's why I got into the space, is to do that, to build innovation platforms and, to create that kind of change. Mining is awesome, but it's not quite that. It'll happen anyway. So, what's kind of happening in El Salvador and what was happening on the ground. So first of all, I'm really excited about the law. I think no law is perfect. And certainly I've seen some commentary on the internet around, things like requiring people to accept it, or businesses to accept it, not people, but requiring business to accept it, and things like that do cause concern with some folks that are really focused on freedom and liberty. And I think that those can be reasonable objections to look at. But I do believe that overall the bill is the law is really powerful and really important in that it recognizes Bitcoin as legal tender. It gives it the same standing side by side with USD for people that want to hold it, that want to spend it, that want to receive it. It's actually like the first time, literally, that cryptocurrency isn't being treated as a second-class currency. And so, from that perspective, it is super exciting. And, it's also very exciting that the government put a pretty short timeline on getting it done. If you remember, in the bill itself, it said the government has 90 days to get that enacted, which means there's about 80 days, actually exactly 80 days left now. And so, frequently governments will announce things and they never happen because they get studied to death without any forward motion. This feels like it's going to be different. I can tell you, so just stepping into the meetings a little bit, and, I'll talk about this stuff at a high level. Every single government official that we met with, one of the first things they mentioned to us was how many days are left before implementation. So it was really clear that across the senior levels of government, they are really focused on getting this done, and getting this done successfully in a short period of time. Like, they're not acting as if the 90 days is like made up and it's just going to get pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. They're acting like the 90 days this is going to get done, or they're not going to have a job anymore. And so, that was really exciting to see. I would say another thing that I saw there, which, I expected and we did see, was, they are clear that they don't have everything that they need in the country to be able to get this done in that time frame. And so they need the support of the crypto community, of the companies that are operating in the Bitcoin space, of the individuals that are operating in the Bitcoin space, to find the ways and places that they're going to be able to engage to help make this, a success. And so, it could be in helping with education. It could be with looking, if you're providing Bitcoin services, can you provide those services in El Salvador, and what are the things that you would need in order to make that happen? I know organizations like BitGive are doing fundraising around, helping to empower the El Salvadorian people to be able to properly utilize Bitcoin services. There's even stuff outside of traditional Bitcoin itself where they could use help, like better internet penetration, some better smartphone penetration and things like that. And so, there's a huge amount that needs to get done in a very short period of time. And all of us are going to need to pull together in order to make that happen. And then the last thing I would say, because I know I'm talking for a long time here in a pretty rapid fire meeting, is one of the things I was really excited to see in the meeting was, basically everybody that was there from both sides, whether it was the delegation or whether it was the people from government, were focused on the issue of how do we make this a success for El Salvador and the El Salvadorian people, and how do we make this a success for Bitcoin? And, I wouldn't, always say that I agreed with every word that came out of every person's mouth, but I definitely would say that every person that was there was trying to focus on creating a positive end result for the people of El Salvador and for Bitcoin, and trying to figure out how we can collaborate between the industry and the government to help make that success happen. And so, I guess that's maybe some of the high level.
Well, thanks so much, Justin. And we appreciate your first person perspective on being there and telling us what's going on. It's interesting to see. Dan, Eve, is Bitcoin more likely to succeed in El Salvador or somewhere like Miami in the developed world? Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it, help the developed world. One of the things when I got into Bitcoin was that it was going to be a currency for the people, and it was going to help the unbanked. Obviously, they're probably a bit priced out of normal transactions now, but when Lightning infrastructure as that expands, it's as it is being rolled out in El Salvador. It's going to have that impact. So I'd like to see it have a positive impact on countries that need it. Miami, if it kicks off in Miami, big time, and Miami becomes a hub, then awesome, that's brilliant. But at the same time, I'd love to see the smaller countries. And coming from one of the smallest minorities on earth in Malta, I was hoping to that Malta, like central bank or whatever, would jump on it. And I know they were trying to become, Muscat was trying to become the blockchain island or the Bitcoin island, and that never actually happened. So I think it would be a lot cooler if it was a small country. It's just a shame, that the World Bank have laid the slap down really for what it seems to be a silly reason, right? It's almost like you're saying. They're saying they don't want to help a country that wants a bit of help. I mean, isn't that what World Bank's for? Being a bit fair and nice and stuff. And if you were to say, if it was, I think the primary reason's down to their energy consumption. But then if the US military alone was a country, then it would be 40th ranking country of energy usage. So, and that's, where do you draw the line as to what is allowable energy wasting and pollutants? Where a lot of that's fuel usage, for example, in terms of military. So those are fumes that are actively going out. Whereas at least this energy comes from a lot from renewable sources. And even if it doesn't, it's from far more efficient factories that would, they fair enough, they pump out fumes, but on a more, on a wider efficient, wider scale, it's more efficient than, say, the engine of a car or a tank that pumps out fumes. So it is a bit of a sad situation where the help isn't being offered, and it's not because of the environment. It's clearly because it's pocket lining. It's losing that control, and that unfortunately is what Bitcoin was built to unsettle. And it is unsettling it, and we're going to see hiccups like that. It wouldn't surprise me if, and dare I say it, we haven't had a sanction yet about the usage of Bitcoin, but that's that could come, and it could be a big annoying thing. But a lot of people are sat in paid pockets, and sanctions could well, if they're saying, right, we're not going to help El Salvador with this rollout, even just from a curiosity perspective, then sanctions could be next. It could be, right, well, we could have helped you, and you're going against our wishes, and therefore, we're going to sanction you, because screw it, we might as well pull the plug on everything. If and that's the thing. If this is infrastructure that could help people and help them survive as well. There's having a monetary system that works for the people. It reduces stress a lot. It can prolong lives because there's less manipulation in the sort of inter-country currencies that could lead to hyperinflation and all sorts. So this is quite serious. It's not just money for the sake of it. It's infrastructure. It's what we live and breathe. People work all their lives to accumulate this money. So it's very important. So to lay the slap down on El Salvador, I say shame on you. Shame on you.
Ben Ark, is Dan Eve right? Should the World Bank have provided technical support to El Salvador so they could switch to Bitcoin?
He's absolutely right that it's a question of relinquishing control. They don't want to relinquish their control, which would be why the US dollar would then have sanctions against a country like El Salvador, Panama, Paraguay. And this is why it's important that actually the Bitcoin does anchor itself somewhat into the US economy through Miami or any other friendly states, any other ways in which Bitcoin can root itself into the US economy. So it's then harder for the US to say, right, anyone dealing with Bitcoin is going to have all these sanctions placed against it, because this is why it's a very appealing alternative to El Salvador, to Paraguay, to Panama, to a lot of these countries, is because for 100 years, they've been trying to find a way to wiggle out of US hegemony, and because it's had a very negative effect on their country's ability to have autonomy. But then obviously that does then butt up against if someone or countries in power and they have control, or the World Bank has some control over the world's economy, then they are gonna fight against losing that control, which is why you have, someone like I said in the last show, when Trump came out and said that Bitcoin is an attack on the US dollar. It is an attack on the US dollar. Yeah, absolutely. It's correct. And it's an attack on the US's wielding power through their currency, having the world reserve currency. So to go back to your question, yes, I absolutely. It's a need of necessity. So I'm like Dan, in that, I live in Wales, and I was really keen on Wales adopting Bitcoin, and us using Bitcoin within Wales, but we don't really need it, because we don't have a currency which is trying to control us so much. We're just part of Great Britain, and our currency kind of, but they're using some, in South America, Central America, they're using someone else's currency, and it is used to control them in a way which they need to kind of wiggle out of. So that necessity is there, and that's why they're going to embrace Bitcoin. And more of them now. El Salvador are, leading the charge. More of them are going to join in. But in saying all that, it is quite important that the Bitcoin is embedded in the US economy, so the US can then not levy harsh sanctions against them for using Bitcoin.
Josh Sigala, I'm not sure what I'm hearing here. Devil's advocate, can I call up Microsoft to get help to switch to Macintosh? Why should the World Bank help El Salvador switch to Bitcoin?
It's a really weird request. I mean, to me, it sort of smells of like they don't really understand it yet, as much as what Justin said. But there's a reason why Satoshi left, because you're making big enemies by releasing this software. If you're the first country to, sorry about that. If you're the first country to accept this as a legal tender, you're taking a big step forward. You're pushing the chessboard towards checkmate, and for the World Bank to be involved in it anyway, what could possibly happen there? What really needs to happen is they need to ask the Bitcoin community to really step up its game in terms of Lightning development. There is, I got into this game in the early days, and everyone in the early days was talking about how Bitcoin is something you can use, something you can pay with, you can have coffees with, you can, all this stuff that we gave Roger Ver shit about. And fair enough, we give him shit because he forked off and did his own thing. And there's other reasons. I mean, I personally don't like the fact that he tried to make Bitcoin Cash seem like Bitcoin and trick people into using some of the coin. But the fact of the matter is, his arguments were, hey, I got into this because I want to free the world and have real currency. And it started to move into a store of value thing. And it is, you can see it, that we have cut out the small people that can't afford, when I say small people, the small economies that are earning $2 a day. They can't afford a transaction costs that are currently on chain. So if El Salvador really wants to use this as a currency rather than a store of value for the wealthy of the country, it means that we need to get the Lightning infrastructure across. And the work that Ben Ark does with Fiat Jeff is just so amazing. And I really think you guys got to, if anyone's watching in El Salvador, have a look at LM Bits. It is stunning, what it can do. But yeah, that's my advice: is ask the Bitcoin community for help, not the World Bank.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in out of order, but I got to say, from my perspective, I think it is freaking awesome that the World Bank said no at the same time that the Bitcoin community voluntarily showed up on their own and said, we're here to help.
Yeah, there you go. Spot on. Spot on. Yep.
That was a great contrast. Let's move on here to the exit question. International response, forced prediction. How does El Salvador end? Is there sanctions, a crisis? Do they have to pay back loans? Or is everyone fine with it? Let's go to Justin Newton first. How does this end? Forced prediction.
I think we all find a way to make it work. I don't think the loans get forced on collection. I think that they find a way to get the bill into law. I don't think that those organizations have the intent or desire to get that involved in the sovereignty of the country, or to harm the economically challenged in those countries out of spite. That just goes so far outside of what the way they should operate that I wouldn't anticipate that they will in this case. And sanctions aren't relevant for this kind of thing. It's just not what sanctions are used for. But this does speak to why it's important that we get this rollout right, that this doesn't become a haven for money laundering or for terrorism financing or for people that are promoting shit coins to show up and steal money from the Salvadorian people, or all those kinds of things. But if we do get it right, and we don't infringe on everybody's privacy, and we don't let the scammers steal all the Salvadorian people's money, I think that this is the glide path up.
Dan Eve, he's almost asking for a counter response. Will they make an example of El Salvador the way they made an example out of Ross Ulbricht? Dan Eve, what happens in El Salvador?
No, I think they'd be too mean if they were to sanction. I mean, I could probably see the sanctions happening against a different country, like maybe if Iran wanted to adopt Bitcoin, and then they'd be like, sanction that. But a smaller, you just seem like a giant asshole bully, wouldn't you? You would be hated by more than just Bitcoiners if you impeded on the progress of a small country that's just trying to get out of the grasp of the dollar ultimately. And yeah, I think that the world would stand up and say, this is BS. World Bank sucks, and then maybe there would even be a knee-jerk reaction to just suddenly start buying Bitcoin and being like, right, we need to outprice these assholes.
Ben Ark, the US has bullied small countries before. Vietnam, will they do it again?
Oh, undoubtedly, they look at the history. Of course, they're going to try and bully small countries, but then Bitcoin prevents that somewhat. If Bitcoin had no contact with the US economy, and there wasn't anyone in the US using Bitcoin, or there wasn't Goldman Sachs integrating Bitcoin and using Bitcoin, then absolutely they would try and levy some sanctions. But this is why it's important that the work which the Miami governor wants to do with Bitcoin and integrating more into the US economy. It's important that they do that. But no, there aren't going to be sanctions for Bitcoin's sake. I do worry about the some of what's happened in El Salvador, like the Bitcoin Beach experiment is fantastic, excellent work, it's really good. But I don't know, like obviously what we're doing with LM Bits, and that's been running for about a year now, is very much about micro custodianship and become a bank for your local community. And then within the Bitcoin Beach project, there didn't seem to be any mention of any of the work which we've done with our software, which is completely free and open source software and has been developed very organically. So it did kind of almost feel like something of a power grab, or they wanted to. There wasn't even a credit, or there was nothing on there in the GitHub. I can't remember the name of the software which they're trying to run for the micro, or the community banks. But it just seemed a little underhanded. And I didn't like that. So I do worry that it's open to corruption. Like everything is open to corruption, isn't it? So it's important that all the options are made available to people in El Salvador, software-wise, and it isn't cornered by a few chosen technocrats.
Josh Shigala, we're switching it up. What do you think about what's been going on in Miami? Also, they say that they've got clean nuclear power. That's a whole separate issue. But we've really got to hand it to the mayor of Miami here. He's really pulling out the stops, and no idea is too small to try to promote Bitcoin and to get it happening in his city. Josh, what do you think about Miami?
Yeah, look, anytime governments want to get involved, good on you. But the fact of the matter is, we don't need them. We don't need any of these bureaucrats involved. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. If anyone wants to get it, there's free and open source software. You can jump on your phone. You can start open a wallet. You can have a full node running. You don't need it. Even in El Salvador, they don't need the government saying, "Oh, you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin." What? Yeah, okay, great. Anyone in El Salvador can and always has been since 2009 been able to use Bitcoin, and so yeah, I mean it's good that maybe they'll try to get some mining across over from China to decentralize that a little bit, but the fact of the matter is, mining is always going to find cheaper sources. So if you're cheaper for now, maybe they'll come across. It is hard to move factories, and when I say factories, miners, very, very easily. But yeah, it's always going to look for the cheapest source of energy. And maybe if nuclear is that, it is quite expensive to hold the waste, to secure the waste. So there's better ways, for instance, hot rocks in the earth, volcanoes. Yeah. but honestly, geothermal is the future of Bitcoin mining. There's just unending amount of power under the earth, so why not use it?
It is very funny. When we got into Bitcoin, we were trying to do things like get your brother involved, get your cousin involved, get your sister involved, maybe your neighborhood, right? Now it's like JP Morgan's involved, Goldman Sachs is involved, and now El Salvador, country size people are getting in. That doesn't mean it's too late. There's a lot of new people getting in on Clubhouse and places like Black Bitcoin Billionaires and all kinds of other chats going on Twitter, and people who just went to this conference and just got in yesterday. There's still a chance for you. It's just a lot harder because our cousin is now El Salvador and our brother is Miami, and they're huge, right? And they have way more money, especially our cousin Goldman Sachs. But let's move on to issue 5, bonus issue. The El Salvador delegation was led by Brock Pierce, who declared it an official delegation of Bitcoin ambassadors to El Salvador to educate the government about how Bitcoin, blockchain, and technology can create a brighter future for everyone in their nation. This delegation, according to Brock Pierce, is the first to visit El Salvador in an official capacity since the start of COVID lockdowns. And Brock is glad to be making history together. This delegation was covered in the newspaper. A bit of an interesting story here, as it was noticed on the new internet that the newspaper was only in some versions of Noticia. At first, it was seen as a conspiracy theory, but later in the day, thanks to Justin and others, we were able to find out that there was a separate printing of the newspaper. And according to this, there's a Long Island local version of it, and there's a version of it in El Salvador. So it's 2 versions of the newspaper. However, there was lots of talk about conspiracy theories and whether or not this group should represent Bitcoin. Of course, we know the real story here, provided by Philippe. So let's go to Justin first, just to try to get some of the conspiracy theories out of the way. And then we'll just talk in general about the Bitcoin delegation. Justin, just simple questions. Were you paid by Brock Pierce? Did you ride on the private jet? Let's start there.
I was not paid by Brock Pierce. I did not ride on a private jet with Brock Pierce.
This is getting less fun already. It started out so much more fun.
I paid all of my own expenses. Well, Netkey paid my expenses with respect to the trip. I've received no promotional or other fees related to the trip.
Did you get a special decoder ring for representing Bitcoin, or a key to the city, or any other kind of?
No, none of that stuff. But I guess I can quickly speak to some of that controversy, because I know the word official freaked a lot of people out, and I totally understand why it did. I think it makes sense that it did. What official referred to was, frankly, the way it was viewed from the government side. we were brought down there as a delegation that was guests of the government, where from their perspective, we were considered what was called an official trade delegation. So we were not saying we were the Bitcoin officials. That was not the intent of what anybody was saying there, or that, you know, we were the only people that could potentially represent Bitcoin, in the same way that when a US trade delegation goes to another country, they're not saying that they're the only companies in the United States. You know, what it really was, you know, late last week, the idea behind doing this started to come together after Brock had a chance to meet with the ambassador up in DC. I frankly don't know the details of how the meeting came together itself. You know, I found out about it, I think through like a WhatsApp group I was in, where there was a pretty open invitation for people that would be interested in helping out to show up. You know, there were only maybe about 35 or 40 people that were able to really drop everything, because, you know, as of Friday of last week, this still wasn't finalized. And so really it was, you know, between Friday afternoon, you had to know that you could be, you know, in El Salvador on Tuesday or Wednesday to be able to sit down with the government all day. And so what this really was a group of 40 people, which, you're right, the whole world didn't know in advance that it was possible, but that of the people that knew were able to really drop everything, make this a priority to try and work with, you know, El Salvador to try and ensure that this Bitcoin law is a success.
Well, I also want to push back against some of the conspiracy theories. It's fun to be all reactive and Bitcoiny and smash it down. But like Justin said, there was a ticking clock here. There's a 90 days to try to write the law. And as far as Brock and the people he chose, I trust them enough to talk about Bitcoin. I'm sure they promote their company too. Why not leave behind some business cards? That's cool. But the facts that they gave them on Bitcoin, on the blockchain, were probably accurate. They probably helped them, and I believe they're well-meaning. As far as if they were chosen by Satoshi or that kind of thing, it is really funny how it works in Bitcoin. Even though we've gotten a lot bigger and we have giant players like Michael Saylor and Mark Cuban and Elon Musk and all this, you still kind of have to choose yourself. It's still really the Wizard of Oz out there. And I saw another chat the other day on Twitter Spaces with Michael Saylor and Perry-Ann Boring, and they were talking about the Bitcoin Mining Council, which is another controversial issue around here. And in the same way, you know, why was Perry-Ann there? Well, you know, 5 years, maybe 7 years ago, a long time now, she started the, I don't know, Center for Digital Currency. It's like
the Digital Chamber of Commerce. Yeah,
Digital Chamber of Commerce. I remember it's Center for Disease Control, so it's confusing. But yeah, she started that years ago. It was well-meaning. She wanted to lobby Congress for Bitcoin and digital Congress. She had experience doing that. She chose herself. And now she's doing well. She's representing in the meeting. The same thing for Brock and the people he took with him. They chose themselves, their business leaders and other things. They wanted to represent Bitcoin. I think they did it pretty well. I think there's definitely, like Justin said, some controversy because of the word official, but that is a diplomatic language versus like a Bitcoin official. And there's some confusion. Brock's, I think he's still the president of the Bitcoin Foundation, but I'm not sure if the foundation is still going. And it's always confusing to see where Brock is. The last time I think I saw him, he was on John Oliver's show, getting lambasted pretty bad for EOS. And then he distanced himself from that project, but I guess he's back to Bitcoin. But all that aside, what are we going to do? Not send anybody, send a bunch of script kiddies, send some angry internet chat. But Peter McCormick could have worn a Bitcoin t-shirt. That's all I'm saying. But Dan, Eve, the Crypto Raptor, what are your thoughts on the official Bitcoin delegation to El Salvador?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. The term official, they're like, you can't represent me. You know, I speak for. But you made a really good point, which is, you vote for yourself. Like that's the whole point about Bitcoin, is that it's open source, and these people elected themselves to go to a conference where they met the president of El Salvador, who then then invited them over to talk about the Bitcoin infrastructure. So this is all opt-in. Like if you want to be the person going and representing Bitcoin, then go to the conference and get in there and get in the conversation. Don't just sit back and moan about it and go, be the person that does it. Put your money where your mouth is. That's how you do it. That's the joy of Bitcoin. It's open source. If you don't like the way it's coded, go and learn the code and start submitting on GitHub. It's all elective. It's self-elective. It's everything is where whatever you want to do, the energy, putting your energy to it and proving your work. That's, you get rewarded. So I think that whoever goes, there's always going to be people pissed off about, they don't speak for me and they don't speak for Bitcoin. But, and I think that there probably was a bit of side shilling there, as there would always be people who have their own little hidden agendas. I'm not saying widespread, but, people are going to be like, oh, but there is also this other coin, But the fact is, they were there for Bitcoin. They were doing Bitcoin good, they were trying to help the rollout of Bitcoin. And it's very time pressured. As you said, it was like under 90 days, as Justin said. So, you don't have time to start, putting some community vote in and then have all the arguments online about, who shouldn't be going there. And then, you don't have time for that. You have you have to, prove your work. And by going to the conferences, by interacting, by taking advantage of opportunities, you're doing exactly that. So, yeah, I just hope, whoever represents or says they represent Bitcoin, obviously they don't actually represent it, but I hope that if they do, they say they do a good job. Yeah, and they do a good job of it. And that's the main thing, that Bitcoin wins ultimately. So
also, it was only a trip to El Salvador. It's not like a trip to Mars or the moon. When Elon Musk calls out for the solar delegates, I hope we'll have a more international process or something for the rocket ride. Ben Ark, your thoughts on the Bitcoin delegation to El Salvador?
Yeah, absolutely well done for stepping up and taking the time to go out there and communicate about Bitcoin. But I do worry about Brock Pierce, because he has been something of a master shitcoiner in the past and shiller of his own bags. When he tweets out that, he's going to talk about Bitcoin and blockchain, I think, okay, there we are. There's the caveat. Couldn't you just say Bitcoin rather than the blockchain bit on the end? So that is worrying. And I think it's important that the Bitcoin community, quote unquote, is worried about it and do also voice their concerns. I'm just worried about technocrats trying to, game the system in their favor, and seeing it as an opportunity to benefit themselves as opposed to benefit El Salvador. So yeah, as much openness as possible. And then, maybe next time I think it would be wise next time for a delegation to kind of be decided upon by people, by the community, maybe, I don't know, signing. I don't know how you would do it, but I would like there to be some warning next time. But then in saying that, El Salvador has had the likes of Jack Mallers and some of the Blockstream folks over there, and they've been chatting about Bitcoin for quite a while. So I'm sure they already know quite a lot about Bitcoin. But yeah, Brock Pierce suddenly coming out of the woodwork and attaching himself to this kind of did get the hairs on the back of my neck standing up a little bit.
It's a strange thing with billionaires, isn't it, Ben? Like, we want their help, but they're so different from us. They have hundreds of millions of dollars. They're not concerned with the day-to-day life of paying rent and that kind of thing. And on one hand, you have someone like Jeff Bezos's wife, who's donated, $5 or $6 billion. You have the same thing probably going to happen soon with Bill Gates's wife donating all these billions of dollars. And then we have Brock, who clearly created the EOS thing with his money and made tons more money. But what's he going to do now? What's he going to do with the hundreds of millions of dollars? And I agree. I hope he means good things for Bitcoin, good things for El Salvador. Obviously, he has his own companies and his own interests to support and to promote. But it is interesting with these billionaires, right? It's a different, again, Brock, $1 million donation. Give me a grant.
It's like with this. I'm just going to mention it again. This Galloy wallet thing, which people keep talking about with this Bitcoin Beach project. I'll read you the segment from their genesis here on their GitHub, because it really annoys me. But they talk about today's wallets are typically two ends of the spectrum, either custodial, managed by an exchange, often large, or non-custodial. And there's nothing really in the middle. A custodial wallet that's open source and one can be deployed for a local community. And I'm like, what's selling bits? What have we been working on for this past year? But like a micro custodial solution for your local community, and there's absolutely no mention of it. I'm just thinking they're pushing their own interest there and not promoting other good projects which have been working on this stuff for a while. That all that kind of annoys me and worries me about this whole El Salvador project. It's important that they have full access to the whole Bitcoin infrastructure and all of its tools. I'm sure they will.
Hey, Ben, I'm going to continue to engage down there. I'd love to follow up with you on how we make sure that we get what you guys are doing plugged in down there.
Cool. Cheers, man.
It probably kind of means that there's no commercial application of LN bits, Ben, and they're just kind of looking for corporations.
Well, no, Galloy it's an open source project. It's confusing as to why. I don't know. It's just confusing that they didn't. There's absolutely no mention on the Git. And I know that people from LN bits had reached out to them. We're just like, why don't you just use LN bits? That's what we'd be fucking building.
Well, let's hope for the best that they just haven't heard of it, or like they're lazy programmers and they don't want to implement new things. I know that Jack Mahler's, friend of the show, has been down there, and at the same time he's promoting Strike and what they do, but he's also promoting Bitcoin. So it is a push and a pull. There is both sides to that. They are promoting their companies, but also helping people. I don't know. We have to go. I remember Dash used to be really popular somewhere like Venezuela. They used to take it in Burger King and all kinds of things like that. And we never heard the end of that. That just,
well, I mean, someone said in the chat, those El Salvadorans are shrewd. Oh, it's Crypto Cleanse, God bless him. When BTC is clogged, they'll just use Bcash. And like, has Roger Ver been out there yet? I bet he'll be out there soon, trying to flip in, ruin the party.
Well, there were tweets almost immediately after the first story broke about Tron becoming the next legal tender in El Salvador. And they might have been jokes, but they might have also been true. You got this guy, he's got a country. If Tron offered him, I don't know how much, millions of dollars, I'm sure he'd be fine with it. How is he?
Well, that scares me.
In Tron and Bitcoin,
bring out the Bitcoin weirdos.
Yeah. And there's even an idea from Max Kaiser where he wanted Bitcoin to maybe float the entirety of their $1 billion bill to the IMF and just pay it off cash in hand, which is a cool story. But it's also, who are we paying this off for? Because obviously he's going to be in a sweet position if he could pay off that loan. But I think that's going to be about it for this show. Oh, we have one more. I have it in the thing. I'm glad I remembered. It was here on the Twitter. One more bonus issue. Wow. So Mark Cuban invests in some peak shitcoin garbage, obviously without any understanding or research, gets demolished on the rug pull, and instead of taking responsibility for a dumb decision, it's because of a lack of regulation. How many Bitcoiners warned you, Mark? How many Bitcoiners? For those of you who didn't hear, Mark Cuban was involved in some kind of DeFi project named Titan. I've never heard of it, but it went from $60 to 3 cents in a matter of minutes, as things often do when you don't do research. Cuban played it off later. He just took a flyer on it, meaning he didn't invest that much money and he didn't care that much, but still he promoted it to you and he told you how good it is. It's John McAfee all over again. So Mark Cuban, another one like Elon Musk that we wish was with us in the beginning and wasn't, and only got with us later on to promote other projects like Ethereum and Titan.
Yeah, I mean, that's the really scary thing with a lot of these very complex contracts, is that they need to be really well audited over and over again, because someone will read the fine print and exploit it if it's available.
This one looks like it wasn't an exploit. Actually, it looks like it lost its peg, and once it lost its peg, Matic just almost instantaneously went to zero. So it wasn't sufficiently collateralized. It lost its peg and it just blew away their own token. So basically the whole stable coin fell to the value of USDT or USDC that was behind it. So it was like 70 or 71 cents to the dollar, and the value of the Matic piece just fell to zero. It doesn't look like a traditional rug pull where, the devs did something to change the contract or something else. They may have been the first to notice that there was an issue and pulled their own coins out before others did. But, it doesn't appear that they actually, did anything, or like anyone hacked the smart contract or did anything else like that. It literally just appears like the peg failed and everything fell over. And, whoever figured out that the peg failed first got their funds out of Matic first, and everyone else was left holding the bag.
So
If
it's
you-
Matic.
Reading an
Sorry.
article, it says like
Well, or sorry, Titan, not
Titan,
Matic.
yeah.
Titan. Sorry.
So,
so the token was recently changing hands for around 0.000000035 down from $65.
Jesus.
Savage.
yeah, but
It's like
By the
worse than
day.
zero. It's more embarrassing than zero.
was there another project called Iron something or other that also
Iron was the name of the stable coin. Titan was the name of their own in-game token that
I
backed
see.
it. Yeah, they're a DeFi
because
token.
my
Iron
CTO
titanium token.
My CTO was the one that said that there was some really small, easy to spot bug in their contract, but maybe there wasn't. I don't know.
May have been, but that wasn't what actually went wrong.
Okay, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's just such an exciting space to invest in. And we're so glad that Mark Cuban is teaching so many people the lesson where you get into Bitcoin and everyone says, just dollar cost average into Bitcoin. You're not too late. You can still get a little bit. You can get a small piece of it yourself. And everyone says, no, I got to guide these altcoins. I get more units. I get 1,000 Doge or something. I get more, right? And plus, you've never heard of LGI or FFBT or NFL, all these things. Those are the new things like no one knows about except me. I'm telling you about it. You should buy a whole lot of it. And then they do that and they lose all their money and they come back to Bitcoin. They're like, yeah, that little piece of Bitcoin I have is worth more than it used to be. Maybe I should get some more of that. And that's how altcoiners become Bitcoiners. So Mark Cuban, you're moving along on your journey. We're rooting for you, Mark. It's never too late to become a Bitcoiner. So let's move on to predictions or story of the week. Dan, Eve, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
I'm going to go with something really basic. It's a classic story of the week. It is non-crypto, but for the first time, my son pooed in the bath the other day. It was really funny because I was sharing a bath with him. So yes, that's my story of the week. It's better than having the rug pulled on you in Titan.
I don't know. It sounds pretty terrible. Hopefully next time he'll be going in the toilet and that'll be the story of the week. Justin Newton, that's hard to follow up, but do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
For me, I think the story of the week continues to be watch what's happening in El Salvador, right? When every major NGO is commenting on it, when the US government is sure to have a strong opinion on it, and there's only 80 days remaining, every single day is going to have some kind of news happening.
My favorite part about the El Salvador story is that now all the international relations people who have been mocking Bitcoin for years now have to pay attention. So a friend of mine's in that field and he's now suddenly like, well, this government can't do it and this government can't do it. And oh, it's bad for the environment. Oh, it's pseudo-anonymous. It's just like the Cornell professor. They just got into it yesterday and they're going through all the same steps that everyone else goes through. I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, I'll just make a copy of that. I'm going to be rich. This is great. Let's do some more internet stuff where I can make copies of things and make money. And of course, it
turns out you're not Charlie Lee.
No, not today. Maybe next time. But let's go to Ben Ark, a prediction or a story of the week. Go ahead, Ben.
Sorry. I wanted to give a shout out actually to a dev who's been building some amazing stuff on. How do I share my screen? Oh, can you enable screen sharing, please?
Yeah, I got that. No.
Thomas, thank you. Everyone can see that, can't they? So Vlad Stan, he took LM bits and he made a browser extension version. So if anyone remembers Joule, that project was great and useful, but it kind of fell by the wayside, maybe because they developed it too early on. But having a browser extension for a Lightning wallet is super useful. And he's taken LM bits and turned it into a browser wallet, which is super cool. And I'm excited about it. And he's just, all in all, a very capable, just a nice bloke. Like, I'm making a new version of the browser wallet, which is, can you see me as well, or can you just see my screen?
I think we can see you as well.
See as well. Okay, so I'm using this little M5 Stick C for it, which is like a $10 device, and I needed just a function, so I could take just a simple function, where I can just take Bitcoin JS, and I can give it a master public key, an address to send some funds to, and an amount. And then using mempool.space, because a lot of people can run that themselves now, and the API is really nice. It will then this function will just magically pick all the right UTXOs, from my, and then build this PSPT, which I can then send across to this thing and sign. And it does like a nice little algorithm to find the best UTXOs. And I offered a bounty for that. And then Vlad Stan took up the project, and he made it. Actually, it's private, so I probably shouldn't share it. But I can show you the thing. That's the BT create thing, which he did for me for Bitcoin JS. But he didn't take the bounty. He just said, "Oh no, this one's on me," and then forked my project and did an amazing job integrating all the code into it. So I just think it's breathtaking, the quality of developers we have on working on Bitcoin stuff, and all this stuff is free and open source. People are just doing it because they feel the urge to, they want to contribute something. They understand it's powerful, liberating software. I just wanted to give him a huge shout out because I'm just so impressed with the work he's doing, and it's just super cool to have him building LMBit stuff and then helping me out on this Bitcoin JS library. Just a reminder of the quality and of developer, not just ability wise, but then also personally on the quality of people we have in the Bitcoin space. Absolutely outstanding.
That's very cool. And a browser plugin is a great idea. That's one of the reasons people like MetaMask so much, is it just runs in the browser there, and they do all their little Ethereum swap trades and things through the browser.
Yeah, well done. I got to take my hat off to that as well.
Yeah,
by the way, if you guys want any help in terms of graphic design and stuff, UX, we've got a new UX designer at work. It's amazing.
Yeah, all contributors are very, very welcome.
All right, and Josh, do you have a story of the week or a prediction? Go ahead.
No, I mean, story of the week is just it's definitely El Salvador, and I really enjoying watching it as well. I didn't get to say earlier, but I think how you pick the people. It's always the titans of industry. They're unelected, but they elected themselves by being successful in this free and open source area of the world. And I totally am with Ben that I wish some of the actual free and open source stuff also got mentioned and got invited along to the thing, not just industry titans that have managed to siphon lots of money off of other people.
Excellent point, Josh. And as we head towards the close, just like to remind everyone to give us a thumbs up down below and to subscribe to the World Crypto Network. Wouldn't it be neat if we got more than 100,000 subscribers and YouTube had to send us one of those plaques? That would be pretty neat. You can also check out the World Crypto Network at worldcryptonetwork.com, created by DJ Booth. You can see our latest video, Spotify Jukebox by Ben. You can create a jukebox for Spotify. If you had a bar or a cafe or some friends, you could charge them 10 sats or 100 sats to play their song. They could request their song through the internet using this Spotify jukebox. It's all open source and it works with LN bits. We've also got some new interviews I did recently about NFTs. You can learn the history of Curio Cards, my 2017 NFT project that recently got rediscovered in 2011. That's a pretty fun story. And shout out to Gabriel D. Vine for joining us. Sorry we lost him halfway through there. But on the left-hand side, you can see here, shout out to my assistant Marwi, who's been tagging these episodes. There's thousands of them. And she's going through the Bitcoin groups. We can see Thomas Hunt, Tone Vase, Theo Goodman, Joshua Segala, and Gabriel D. Vine, all on the top names list here. They've been in a lot of shows. And Dan Eve and Ben Ark rounding out the top 10 or so on the front page. So you guys can check out that action as the tagging's happening at worldcryptonetwork.com. And you can watch all these shows for free on YouTube or worldcryptonetwork.com. I even updated the podcast recently, so we're almost up to date on audio stuff. So if you need to go on a road trip or something. But that's about it. Thanks again to Justin for being here with the real-time first-person look into El Salvador. It's great to hear that. And to be able
thanks, Justin.
to diffuse some of this FUD
Great to be here.
Wasn't a special jet trip and you weren't paid, and I didn't, not that I was saying that, but you just got to get out of it.
I think
someone
I'm
asked me how much ES I got.
I'm got to get out in front of that because it's not true, and the only way to do it is to ask people directly. And the same thing with the newspaper. I see the first story and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, did Brock Photoshop a newspaper? It's obvious that's going to be discovered. Like, that's a horrible thing to fake unless it's a joke or something. And then you had the other newspaper, and I'm like, is Justin involved in a conspiracy? Did Brock print the newspaper, give it to Justin to put it on the thing? And then you had the other page too. And then fortunately the programmer person came through with the information that there's different versions of this newspaper. It's not a grand conspiracy. But it was a fun 15 minutes or so thinking it was a grand conspiracy there.
Yeah, it's very reassuring that Justin was there, actually. That kind of does calm some of my nerves.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again to everybody for being here. Thanks to Gabriel Devine. Sorry we missed you at the end. And until next time, bye.